The greatest trick Paul Heyman ever pulled was not in ECW, not in Brock Lesnar's career, and not even in his decades of manipulating audiences with his mouthpiece magic. No, the biggest trick of his entire career was convincing the world that Roman Reigns was unstoppable. For 1,316 days, WWE presented Roman Reigns as the tribal chief, the head of the table, the man who carried the company on his back and crushed everyone in his path. Fans were told he was unbeatable, untouchable, the most dominant champion of the modern era, but the truth is shocking. Roman didn't create that reign, Paul Heyman did. Every word, every phrase, every subtle shift in narrative, every psychological weapon that turned Roman from the company's most hated babyface into its most dominant heel that was Paul Heyman's orchestration. Roman Reigns may have been the face of the era, but Heyman was the architect who pulled every string behind the curtain. And when you look closer, when you really see the tricks Heyman used, you'll realize Roman's reign wasn't just historic. It was manipulated, controlled, scripted into inevitability. And the more you uncover the reality, the more you realize the 1,316 days weren't Roman's reign at all. They were Paul Heyman's masterpiece. Before we go deeper into the lies WWE doesn't want you to see, make sure you subscribe right now to AlphaWar Room, because here, we don't just talk wrestling, we expose the hidden truths behind the business. When Roman returned in August 2020 after a hiatus, everything changed overnight. He wasn't the same smiling, forced babyface WWE had shoved down the fans' throats for years. He came back with a new aura, a new edge, and most importantly, Paul Heyman standing by his side. And that partnership wasn't just for show. It was the key that unlocked one of the most legendary, protected, and controversial championship reigns of all time. Heyman understood something that no one else in WWE seemed to grasp. Roman didn't need to be loved. He didn't even need to be cheered. Roman needed to be acknowledged. And acknowledgement doesn't come from popularity. It comes from fear, respect, inevitability. The first trick Heyman used was the illusion of invincibility. For years, fans booed Roman because they felt he was manufactured. The chosen golden boy Vince McMahon wanted to push no matter how much the audience rejected it. But Heyman flipped that narrative. He didn't try to get the audience on Roman's side. He told them straight to their face that they had no choice. You don't have to like Roman, you don't have to cheer him, you simply have to acknowledge him. That word acknowledge was not accidental. It was chosen with precision. Because acknowledgement is not optional. It's not about your feelings, it's about accepting a fact. And once Heyman framed Roman's dominance as fact, not opinion, the psychology changed. Fans stopped seeing challengers as potential threats. They started seeing Roman as the inevitable. That's the foundation of the 1,316-day reign, inevitability. But Heyman's genius didn't stop there. He layered trick upon trick to reinforce Roman's aura. One of the most powerful was the creation of the Island of Relevancy. This wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a psychological masterstroke. By constantly declaring that Roman was the centerpiece of WWE, Heyman reframed the entire company around him. Every wrestler who stepped into the ring with Roman wasn't just another challenger, they were elevated, made to feel like world-class talent. Heyman would praise Daniel Bryan as one of the greatest technical wrestlers alive. He would call Edge a Hall of Fame legend, Kevin Owens the toughest fighter in the business. By building up every opponent as extraordinary, Heyman created the illusion that Roman was standing on a mountain surrounded by giants. And every time Roman knocked one of them down, his dominance looked even greater. The trick was that Roman's victories didn't diminish the challengers, they elevated Roman above them all. That's what people miss. Heyman wasn't just hyping Roman, he was hyping the challengers, so Roman's victories felt like seismic events. This was not about burying anyone. It was about constructing a mythology where Roman was the final boss, the one who stood taller than every world-class opponent who dared to step into his island. Then came another subtle but devastatingly effective trick, the selective voice. For years, Roman was mocked for his promos. Fans booed him because his lines felt scripted, forced, and unnatural. The infamous Sufferin' Succotash promo became a meme. WWE kept giving him too much to say, and the audience rejected it. But when Heyman arrived, that problem vanished overnight. Roman stopped talking, or rather, He only spoke when it mattered. Heyman became the mouthpiece, the shield, the firebrand who filled the silence with venom and brilliance. Roman, meanwhile, stood tall, silent, and imposing. And when he finally did speak, it wasn't wasted words. It was a short command, a chilling threat, a cold declaration of dominance. Heyman flipped the weakness of Roman's promo skills into one of his greatest strengths. Roman's silence became power. His words became scarce and therefore precious. This was not an accident. It was the calculated genius of Paul Heyman. By silencing Roman, he created a new aura, the aura of a king who only speaks when necessary, whose silence carries more weight than the endless words of anyone else. And then, Heyman weaponized history. This is where his genius as a storyteller truly shined. Paul Heyman knows wrestling history better than anyone, and he used it to craft Roman's mythology. He constantly reminded fans of the Samoan dynasty, of the Wild Samoans, of Yokozuna, of The Rock. He made sure the audience saw Roman not just as a champion, but as the heir to a bloodline of warriors. Roman wasn't just holding a championship belt. He was carrying a legacy. He was defending a throne that was bigger than him, bigger than WWE, bigger than the entire business. By framing Roman's reign as a continuation of family history, Heyman elevated the championship into something sacred. It wasn't about wins and losses anymore. It was about lineage, tradition, destiny. And here's the brilliance. When you frame a champion as destiny itself, defeat becomes blasphemy. If Roman lost, it wasn't just a setback. It was an insult to history, a denial of fate. Heyman made it psychologically impossible for fans to even imagine Roman losing without it feeling wrong. But Heyman's most famous trick, the one that cemented Roman's aura, was the spoiler. This isn't a prediction, this is a spoiler. For decades, Heyman used that line, but with Roman, it took on a new, terrifying meaning. Every time he declared a spoiler, he conditioned the audience to expect Roman's victory. Not hope for it, not root for it, expect it. And once that expectation takes root, the psychology of the match changes completely. Fans stop asking, can Roman win? And instead ask, how will Roman win? The challenger isn't seen as someone who could dethrone him. They're seen as someone who will inevitably fall. That trick killed suspense. And at the same time, it built invincibility. Roman was no longer a competitor, he was inevitability personified. And while these tricks built Roman's aura, Heyman was also working behind the scenes as a creative mastermind. The Bloodline story wasn't just Roman's dominance, it was a layered drama filled with betrayals, alliances, heartbreaks, and family conflict. Jey Uso's rebellion wasn't just another feud, Heyman helped frame it as family tearing itself apart, blood versus blood, cousin versus cousin, loyalty versus independence. Sami Zayn's betrayal wasn't just about a friend turning on Roman, it was about heartbreak, manipulation, and emotional devastation. Every twist in the Bloodline saga kept fans hooked, kept Roman's reign fresh, and made sure the championship was never just about the belt, it was about the story, the family, the drama. And that drama stretched Roman's reign far beyond what anyone thought possible. The genius of Heyman's tricks is that they worked on multiple levels at once. On the surface, they made Roman look unstoppable, but deeper down, they rewired the audience's psychology. Roman stopped being judged as a wrestler. He started being judged as a king, a patriarch, a generational talent. He wasn't measured by match quality or movesets anymore. He was measured by aura, by legacy, by dominance. And when you change the measuring stick, you change the game. That's the ultimate trick Paul Heyman pulled. He turned Roman Reigns from a man into a myth, from a wrestler into a monarch, from a superstar into the tribal chief. And once that transformation was complete, defeat became unthinkable. Because how do you pin a myth? How do you dethrone a dynasty? You can't. And that's why Roman's reign stretched for 1,316 days. So let's be brutally honest. Roman Reigns may have been the champion, but Paul Heyman was the reason. Heyman's tricks, the island of relevancy, the selective silence, the weaponized lineage, the spoiler, the layered storytelling, they engineered an empire around Roman. They manipulated fans into seeing his dominance as natural law. The biggest lie WWE ever told you is that Roman Reigns was unstoppable because of brute force. The truth is far more shocking. Roman was unstoppable because Paul Heyman made you believe he was. Roman may have been the tribal chief. But Paul Heyman was the wise man who built the empire, the mastermind who sustained the illusion, the genius who turned dominance into destiny. And when the history of WWE is written, the real 1,316-day reign belongs not to Roman Reigns, but to Paul Heyman, the greatest manipulator professional wrestling has ever known.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.